I remember the conversation we had when you told me that you want to have a discussion about food as medicine. I have a moral obligation to inform the public that this traditional food is good for diabetes ASAP. This is as per the American Diabetes Association's guidelines. This is a medical nutrition therapy. A 3,000-year-old nutritional gem, this jackfruit atta, is a nutritional gem which we have brought back to India. This is much bigger than just diabetes. And he's taking insulin. He's staying with me. Let me give it to him and try. For the next 3 nights, he replaced his dad's roti with the jackfruit meal and reduced his insulin by 20 units. Still, the sugar level was under control. Sriyumar, first of all, thank you for inviting me to the session. And I remember the conversation we had when you told me that you want to have a discussion about food as medicine. Okay, and in fact today I will also discuss about the difference between food as a medicine as well as taking medicine from food. Okay, so as you mentioned, I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was writing a book and then started looking at the jackfruit. But let's look at what happened in the last 10 years. 2015 is the first time I made this information public that the unripe jackfruit or the green jackfruit as a meal, which is the Kerala tradition of making chakkapuzhukku in Kerala, is good for diabetes. 2015 is the first time we made this information public. Now, a lot of people criticize me for making that information public. Okay, usually in the scientific world, you keep everything secret till the research is complete and then you publish it. That is when you make it public. But I went against that. As soon as I found out there is a scientific reason why replacing rice with the Kerala tradition of the jackfruit meal or chakkapuzhukku is good for diabetes, I felt that I have a moral obligation to inform the public that this traditional food is good for diabetes ASAP. Okay, because people were cutting off jackfruit trees at the time. Okay, if I don't let people know, that they wouldn't try. Okay, and by the time I complete the research, it may be too late. And that is the difference between a food and a medicine. A food you can consume from day one while the research is going on. Okay, let me share what I went through. Okay, 2014 Easter is when I found out that okay, there is one case of when a priest who was taking insulin, one night he replaced his rice with the Kerala traditional jackfruit meal, took his normal dose of insulin, and he had a severe hypoglycemia, which means the sugar level went too low. And he came and told me this in 2014 Easter. But I then kept on researching what actually happened. Is it a one-off case or is something which is more bigger? And then we found out that okay, 1 cup of rice versus 1 cup of jackfruit meal, it is 40% lower in carbohydrate, 40% low in calorie, and 4 times more fiber. This is exactly what a diabetes patient is supposed to do: reduce carbohydrate, reduce calorie, increase fiber. Then we found a paper published in Ceylon Medical Journal in 2012. The glycemic load of the jackfruit meal is 40% lower than rice or bread. So which means as per the medical nutrition therapy guidelines of American Diabetes Association, replacing rice with the green jackfruit meal is actually medical nutrition therapy, which you're supposed to do before you start medication. I then approached a diabetologist in Kochi, Dr. Joni Kannapalli. I told him, look, this is as per the American Diabetes Association's guidelines. This is a medical nutrition therapy. He went through the data. He said, James, this is against whatever I have learned and whatever I've been practicing for the last 18 years. But the way you have articulated the data which you have shown makes sense to me. My father is diabetic. and he's taking insulin. He's staying with me. Let me give it to him and try. For the next 3 nights, he replaced his dad's roti with the jackfruit meal and reduced his insulin by 20 units. Still, the sugar level was under control. For 3 consecutive nights, he saw that when he was replacing roti or rice with the jackfruit meal, he is able to reduce the insulin by 20 units and still the sugar was under control. And that is when we made that information public. So I have heard it from one anecdotal evidence. I did my research to find out there is a scientific reason behind it. I went and validated that with a diabetologist who tried it on his own father and then found out the same result. And that is when we made it public, 2015. 5 years later, to make it available for rest of India, I made a flour out of the green jackfruit. And because I made a flour out of this, I could do a double-blind placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial. And this was done at a medical college in Andhra Pradesh, Srikakulam, where the patients were asked to add jackfruit flour for breakfast in their idli and dosa, and jackfruit flour in the roti for dinner. Okay, and the placebo group was given rice flour for breakfast and wheat flour for dinner. So the placebo group was replacing rice in idli and dosa with rice flour. In the night, in roti, they were replacing wheat flour with wheat flour itself. So it's a placebo effect was removed. So when we did the double-blind placebo-controlled randomized controlled trial for 90 days, what we could clearly see was in 90 days, they had in their idli and roti, they had replaced wheat with jackfruit flour or rice with jackfruit flour. But after 90 days, the group which had jackfruit flour had a significant decrease in average blood sugar level known as HbA1c. The group which had rice flour and wheat flour had an increase in HbA1c. This is a clear contrast between the jackfruit flour group had a decrease in HbA1c, the rice flour or wheat flour group had an increase in HbA1c. We presented this at the American Diabetes Association's conference in 2020. And in 1 year, we did a peer review and presented that at the Nature Group journal, Nutrition and Diabetes. That is when it became scientific evidence. Once it is peer-reviewed and published in a globally reputed medical journal like Nature Group's Nutrition and Diabetes, many doctors and nutritionists started recommending jackfruit flour to their patients. And one of them was Dr. Vinod Abhichandani from Ahmedabad. And he has been practicing diabetes when he's a diabetes and endocrine physician and prescribing diabetes medication for the last 35 years to his patients. When he read this study, he found out this is actually fundamental medical nutrition therapy. So he started giving it to his patients as well as his wife. And in 3 months, he called me. He said, "James, this is not just for diabetes. I've seen my wife's HbA1c coming down from 7.9 to 7.6, her cholesterol coming down, triglycerides coming down, uric acid levels became normal, and her overall weight has reduced by 3 kilograms in just 3 months. But there is something more." He said, "James, my wife's grade 2 fatty liver has come down to grade 1 in just 3 months. This is fundamental metabolic correction. If there is one medicine which could do all of this, I would have given it to my wife long time ago. This is a nutritional gem what you have discovered. A 3,000-year-old nutritional gem, this jackfruit atta, is a nutritional gem which you have brought back to India. This is much bigger than just diabetes. Okay, I am going to recommend all my patients, all my staff, everyone to start using the jackfruit flour in their atta every day because this is fundamental correction to all metabolic disease." So he kept on giving me feedback about patients' cases. So whenever I have a joint presentation, he will make a case study about each cases. And then it continued, and then he said, "James, I now have more than 200 patients who have reversed many metabolic conditions. And consistent reversal of fatty liver was coming out cases after cases. And I had met Professor Roy Taylor of Newcastle University in 2017 at the Endocrine Society conference in Kovalam in Trivandrum. And during that time, I had explained to Professor Roy Taylor what I have uncovered with the Kerala tradition of eating the unripe jackfruit as a meal, as an alternate to rice or wheat, and then we are seeing the blood sugar levels coming under control. He looked at the calorie difference between rice, roti versus the unripe jackfruit. He said, James, it is not as low as the very low calorie diet, but it is still a low calorie diet. It may take longer, but what you're giving is a food, not a diet. A food is what you enjoy with the rest of the family. A diet is what you suffer alone. So the jackfruit meal tradition of Kerala is actually a lot more practical than putting people on a diet, because this is something that people like to have. And by making it a flour, anybody can have it. But then he gave me one tip. He said, James, the way diabetes happens is after liver fat. So let me explain this. When the body takes excess calorie, especially the carbohydrate gets stored as fat in the biggest organ inside our body, the liver. Okay? And as the liver fat keeps growing, the spillover happens to additional organs. When the liver fat goes up in the pancreas, it becomes diabetic. When the fat goes up in your ovary, it becomes PCOS. So before you can reduce pancreatic fat, the liver fat will start coming down. And it's very difficult to measure the pancreatic fat. So keep an eye on liver fat. If liver fat is coming down when people are taking jackfruit flour, then the process of reversal has started. So keep an eye on the liver fat. So when Dr. Abhichintani told me that, okay, my patients are reversing fatty liver, I understood this is what Professor Roy Taylor had told me. And during this time, a researcher from JSS Medical College, Mysore, Divya Kumar, reached out to me on Twitter. And Divya told me, James, I've come back from the US and I've set up a liver research lab in JSS Medical College. Is there anything I can do with jackfruit flour? So I told Divya that okay, Dr. Abhichintani has now over 200 patients. He's consistently reversing fatty liver. Is there anything which you can do around fatty liver? So she told me, James, Dr. Abhichintani's patients were going back to their home, so they were taking jackfruit flour and other things in their food. So we can't 100% pinpoint that, okay, jackfruit flour is the only thing which made a difference to their fatty liver. So what Divya told me, if I do the study on mice models, lab mice models, they're identical mice. And I can give one mice a placebo and another group with the jackfruit flour. And they are in the lab environment, so there is no other confounding factor. And if we can replicate what Dr. Bichintani has seen with his patients, if we can replicate that with the mice model, then we can 100% pinpoint that, okay, look, the only reason for the fatty liver reduction is the jackfruit flour. And I agreed. So we had the mice model. We used Western diet as a way to increase body weight and the liver fat in the mice model. So one group had the Western diet, the other group had the healthy diet. And then once the study got over, Divya told me, James, it's real. The placebo group had a significantly higher amount of liver fat versus the jackfruit flour group. And we were able to replicate what Dr. Bichitani's patients are getting in this mice study. And what Divya showed me was this data. The wheat flour group had a significantly higher weight for their liver, whereas the jackfruit flour had a significantly lower weight, which means the liver fat weight was significantly lower for the jackfruit flour group. But what intrigued me more was on this graph. The black line is the healthy diet, and the red line is the Western diet. So in the first 12 weeks, the mice almost doubled its body weight. And then it was intervened with wheat flour as placebo with 5%, and jackfruit flour is the green line. 5% of the Western diet was replaced with jackfruit flour. So the wheat flour group continued to gain body weight, while the jackfruit flour group stopped gaining any weight. So what I got curious is what actually triggered this weight gain. As Srikumar, as you said, even children have this problem, right? So when I compared what is the difference between the healthy diet and the Western diet, the Western diet had 42% more sugar. Okay, so with 42% more sugar, it almost doubled the body weight. But we only replaced 5% of the Western diet with jackfruit flour. So when this line was steady, which means just 5% jackfruit flour was able to neutralize the effect of 42% sugar. And that is remarkable. Just 5% jackfruit flour is able to prevent 42% sugar in the Western diet from adding any weight. And then I was presenting this at the American Society for Nutrition conference in Chicago in 2024. And all the professors whom I met, they told me, James, we have never seen a flat line in food. Even intermittent fasting, there is a slight gain in body weight in the mice model. Only medicines can keep it flat. But a food keeping it flat, we have never seen. This is something significant. Okay, but there was another researcher who was there to present about the impact of soluble fiber in processed food. Dr. Vishal Singh from Penn State University. And he was presenting how ultra-processed food can be made healthier by adding soluble fiber. And I showed him the graph of the flat line with the jackfruit flour. And he told me, James, we have tested different types of soluble fiber in ice cream with a continuous glucose monitor to see which soluble fiber is more effective in controlling sugar. And he said, the soluble fiber which had the biggest effect was pectin, which is a soluble fiber from fruits like apple or orange. But pectin is a soluble fiber in jackfruit as well. Okay, now, how do we know jackfruit has this specific pectin? The answer comes from our ancestors. For centuries, our ancestors knew it's possible to make a jam or variety from chakapazham or the ripe jackfruit. We have so many fruits, like you mentioned, Srikumar. We have mango, we have pineapple. How can no one bother to make a jam from pineapple or the mango, but only from jackfruit our ancestors figured out it's possible to make a jam or variety from it. And before we get to the science, it's there in our literature. In fact, the one which I would quote is, the most bestseller or popular recent epic, The Covenant of Water by Dr. Abraham Verghese. Already 2 million copies have been sold, and this is also on the Oprah Winfrey's book club. Okay, it's a bestseller, but the most romantic dish, the lead character, Mariamma, who then becomes Valiamachi, when she gets married, her sister-in-law teaches her one spectacular dish, which is chakka variety or the jackfruit jam. And the way she narrates that recipe to her is that when you make this, when you're mixing it, think about one thing which you want from your husband and keep on mixing it, keep on stirring it till it becomes a jam. Okay, but if you try to do that with a pineapple, it will remain a sugar syrup for days. But the jackfruit becomes a jam very quickly, becomes a gel, it becomes a jam very quickly. Why? How do you make a jam? Okay, how do people make pineapple jam? In the juice, you add another ingredient called pectin. When you add pectin, the juice becomes a gel and immediately becomes a jam. So pectin is added to make jam, but that pectin is naturally available in the jackfruit. That is why we are able to make a jam from jackfruit without adding pectin. So pectin is a soluble fiber naturally present in jackfruit compared to other fruits available in Kerala. So what is so unique about jackfruit is jackfruit has natural pectin. Okay, so that's one dish. And the same book, later on, Mariamma's son, Philippos, becomes a hero in Kerala. And Srikumar, you mentioned the history. During the World War, Winston Churchill took the entire rice from Kerala for the soldiers. So Kerala was starving. Villages in Kerala were starving. But Mariamma's son, Philippos, started serving the poor people in that village with chakkapurukka or the green jackfruit meal as an alternate to rice. That is how historic these two dishes are for Kerala. The chakka variety or the jackfruit jam or the chakkapurukka, the unripe jackfruit meal or the green jackfruit meal as a rice replacement. It saved Kerala from starvation. Okay? That is how ancient these two dishes are of Kerala. It's a food. It's a traditional food. Now, as I mentioned, this is the jackfruit which we make the flour. Okay, the unripe jackfruit. This is rich in pectin. And you get that when you make the jackfruit meal or you make the jackfruit flour. Okay, and this one, when it turns ripe, it has 5 times more sugar. When it is not ripe, it is bland and neutral like potato. Okay, so the jackfruit mash is like the mashed potato. Now, here I will pause and talk about the difference between using food as medicine and extracting medicine out of the food. Okay, if anybody can search on PubMed, which is the #1 portal where you look at scientific journals, PubMed, if you look for the keyword pectin, there are 16,000 papers on pectin, scientific papers on pectin. Okay, and of which 233 are on diabetes, 330 are on liver. Okay, so the benefit of pectin for diabetes and liver were known for ages. But when they extracted pectin out of the fruits, and this is what Professor Dr. Vishal Singh told me, they added pectin into ice cream and checked the increase in sugar level. Compared to all other soluble fibers, the ice cream sugar increase was controlled best by pectin. But there was one problem. The ice cream tasted like tamarind. It was very sour. Okay? And if you want to know, try gummy bear or jelly beans. They are like tamarind. Even with 60% sugar, they are very sour because pectin is very sour when you extract it out of the fruit. It's because you put it through an acid medium. But James, you have done something clever. The jackfruit flour is neutral. You have not extracted pectin out of the food. You kept it inside the food, so it has a neutral taste. That is why you're able to add this to roti or idli dosa. The taste doesn't change. He said, what you have done is brilliant. So keeping it as a food than as an extract, you did not alter the taste of the natural pectin. Okay, whereas the industry has made pectin as an extract, the powdered pectin, but it's okay to add this to a jam because the jam is already sour. Okay, so it doesn't alter the taste of sour. But let's look at this biscuit. The biscuit, if you add pectin, it will taste like tamarind. Nobody's going to eat this biscuit. But when I added, so after coming back from the American Society for Nutrition conference, I then asked a chocolate manufacturer and a biscuit manufacturer to replace 5% of this biscuit with jackfruit flour. And you taste it, it tastes like biscuit, not tamarind. You cannot make out any difference. And then there was a nutritionist in Mumbai. She had told me that, James, one of my, and her clients are type 1 diabetes children. And she said one of her clients' mother made a muffin out of the jackfruit rectifier flour and gave it to her son. And she noticed that, okay, the son does not require an extra dose of insulin when he is taking the muffin made from the jackfruit flour. So I reached out to nutritionist Cheryl Salis and said, Cheryl, look, not every mother can make a muffin. I've got these biscuits and chocolates. Could you give it a try? And what we found out was surprising. So when they were taking the chocolate or the biscuit with the 5% jackfruit flour, the glucose line in continuous glucose monitor was a flat line. And when they're taking normal chocolate or normal biscuit, there's a spike and it comes down. Whereas the jackfruit flour is a flat line, exactly what Divya study has shown, that up to 42% sugar can be neutralized with just 5% jackfruit flour. Now, this can be added to any processed food. By not separating the pectin, it can blend in very well with any other processed food without altering the taste or texture, and you can take the tasty processed food without guilt. Now, mothers can add this to the children's lunchbox, the same biscuit, without guilt. And as adults, we all like to have 1 or 2 biscuits with our tea. Now you can have that without worrying about the sugar spike, all from this humble jackfruit. Now I'll tell you why I made it public in 2015. Now in 2025, India's #1 researcher with the most published papers in diabetes is Dr. V. Mohan of Chennai, with Dr. Mohan's Diabetes. In 2025, Dr. Mohan's team has written to all the patients that jackfruit flour is a game changer for diabetes. Now, going from diabetologist Dr. Joni Kannapalli's father in 2015 to Dr. V. Mohan's patients in 2025, 10 years. But why did I make it public in 10 years ago? Because as a food, anybody can start use it from day one, while the research is going on, okay? And because of that, at least 1 million people got the benefit before Dr. Mohan made the conclusion that jackfruit flour is a game changer for diabetes. Okay, I have 7.7 million customers on Amazon. That is why I have a 13,000 reviews with a 4.2 out of 5 rating, 90% satisfaction. Okay, while the research is going on, we were feeding people with the jackfruit flour because it's a food. Okay, and it's fundamental medical nutrition therapy. If I had kept quiet in the last 10 years, jackfruit trees would have gone extinct in Kerala. Okay, so as a food, you should communicate. You should communicate upfront if you find something and you can find there is a scientific reason for why this jackfruit meal for that one person who was taking insulin, the sugar level went too low, which means if he was, next time when he takes the jackfruit meal, he could talk to his doctor and calibrate his insulin dose like what Dr. Joni Kannapalli did for his father. So as a food, we should make public aware of it from day one because it's a natural food. It's a traditional food, okay? you should encourage people to consume it because it cannot do any harm anyway, because it's a food, it's a traditional food, it's time-tested food. For centuries, Malayalis have been eating. But the English language has jackfruit, the fruit is in the word itself. And that is why the medical recommendation said, if you're diabetic, do not eat jackfruit. It was only meant for the ripe fruit, not for the unripe fruit. Okay, and only Malayalis know that, okay, it's possible to eat the unripe jackfruit as a rice replacement, like what I mentioned during the wartime when Winston Churchill took rice away from Kerala. We could survive on jackfruit. Okay, so it's a time-tested food. What I have done is made it easy by making a flour out of it so it can be added to any food which you like to eat. Okay, so that is the story on the diabetes. In 10 years ago, I made it public. Now millions, at least 1 million people have got the benefit already from Kerala, by the traditional jackfruit meal or the chakapurukku, and from outside Kerala through the jackfruit restorative flour to at least 7 lakh people on Amazon itself. Okay, that is the benefit of making food information public early on. Now coming to the fatty liver. Okay, 2022 is when Dr. Abhichantani told me his wife's grade 2 fatty liver reversed to grade 1 in 3 months. And then he kept on giving me feedback that over 200 patients have seen this benefit, but I kept quiet. Till Divya told me the mechanism, the scientific reason why the jackfruit flour is actually reducing the fatty liver. Again, back to pectin, the soluble fiber. Okay, the difference between the placebo diet and the jackfruit flour diet was only soluble fiber. Okay, so in diabetes, the mechanism of action is, first it reduces the carbohydrate, reduces calorie, increases fiber, reduces glycemic load. But the soluble fiber, as you eat, the soluble fiber starts binding water and becomes a gel like a jam in your stomach. Okay, and it slows down gastric emptying. It stays in your stomach longer, so you feel full for longer. You end up taking less snack. But then it enters the small intestine, it starts binding fat, cholesterol, and sugar from absorption into the liver. So in the small intestine, it prevents absorption of fat, cholesterol, and sugar, and then moves it to the large intestine. In the large intestine, the soluble fiber pectin ferments and becomes a feed for the gut microbiome. And it rebuilds the intestinal lining, the mucus layer on the intestine. Okay, that's how your gut lining becomes more strong, and it prevents toxic materials from entering your body. Okay, but in Divya's study, we have seen a secondary action from the gut to the liver. The short chain fatty acids, once the soluble fiber ferments into short chain fatty acids, one of the short chain fatty acid, propionate, travels from the gut to the liver through the portal vein. And in the liver, it upregulates an enzyme called AMPK. When AMPK gets upregulated, it actually burns visceral fat deposited in our liver and other organs. So we have seen a significant drop in visceral fat from this AMPK action. Okay, so now I've got 200 patients plus data from Dr. Abhichantani. I've seen the mechanism of action through Divya's study. I was clear. There is a reason why the jackfruit flour is actually reversing fatty liver. And 2024, after we submitted the abstract to the American Society for Nutrition Conference, I went on stage in front of 1,200 people at the TEDx in Mumbai, and I revealed that the jackfruit flour is a simple solution for fatty liver. And we have seen cases after cases of fatty liver reversal from grade 3 to grade 2, grade 2 to grade 1, or grade 1 to nil in just 3 months. And because 1 in 3 people in India have fatty liver from food. And not just adults, even children. Okay, if there is a simple dietary solution to reverse fatty liver, I have the moral responsibility to make it public. And that is what I did. And what I spoke to 1,200 people at the TEDx venue, once the video got published, It has now crossed 1.2 million views. More than 12 lakh people got inspired by that, and then we ran out of stock. That's a different story. But one of the persons who watched that video was Sri P.H. Kurian, former additional Chief Secretary of Kerala. Sri P.H. Kurian told me, James, I've been diabetic for last 20 years. And in the last 10 years, I've started testing as fatty liver grade 1. And in the last 2 years, it has progressed to grade 2. And it's a serious concern for me. Okay. And I told him, look, and he said, okay, I've met all my doctors. I've done a couple of ultrasound, but I'm not able to find a solution. I sent him the TEDx video, and he said, okay, I've seen your TEDx video. Can you send me the study behind that? So I sent him the preclinical study. Unfortunately, Sri P.H. Kurian was doing his PhD in chemistry before he got IAS. So he's an expert in chemistry, especially biochemistry. Okay, he understood the biochemistry of how the jackfruit flower works from the gut through the portal vein to the liver and how it regulates the AMPK enzyme. He said, I can understand the chemistry. Let me give it a try to myself. And I sent him 2 packs. And then the first 2 months, he figured out a way to use 30 grams of jackfruit flower every day. And he found a unique way than what I recommended. He added 3 tablespoons of jackfruit flower in buttermilk and added 2 tablespoons of freshly grated coconut and had it before his breakfast every day. And then from then every 2 months, and every month he will take 2 packets of jackfruit flower from Amazon and started consuming it. After 3 months, he went and checked his liver function test, and he found the SGPT and SGOT as coming to the normal range. In another 3 months, he went to the gastroenterologist, got the ultrasound done, and to his surprise, his grade 2 fat liver got reversed to nil. In 6 months, his grade 2 fat liver got reversed to grade 0 just by adding 3 tablespoons of jackfruit flour with buttermilk every day. Okay, this is a 10-year history of fatty liver got reversed in 6 months. Now, if I didn't make public, his fatty liver would have progressed further. Correct? That is what I mean by food as medicine versus extracting medicine out of food. Can an ingredient work? An extracted ingredient work? It's not a general statement. A lot of ingredients do work. But pectin, when you extract, you're actually extracting it through acid medium that changes the taste of pectin. And also, it's more acidic in nature. So when it's inside the jackfruit, it's neutral. But when you take it out, it has got a sour taste. That is the only case with pectin. So what I was saying was, in jackfruit in its natural form, it is versatile. Okay, why take the pectin out when you can get it from the jackfruit itself, like your wife is able to make the chakkavarati, right? Because it has got natural pectin. Okay, so when you can get the pectin from the food itself, why work extra to extract that out and get the benefit? So take it from the natural food itself. Okay, but that is not the case with many other extracts like curcumin. You need a lot of turmeric to get to that dose of curcumin. Okay, so it works in many cases, but not in this case. But when you extract, we have another problem. Okay, now let's take the example of a lectin from jackfruit seed, jacqueline. Jacqueline had been extracted from the jackfruit seed 35 years ago. And there are 700 papers published on jacqueline. of which 110 are on cancer benefits itself. Okay, and I met with a professor from MD Anderson at the Banaras Hindu University when we were presenting a study on how the jackfruit flower, when you take jackfruit flower along with the chemotherapy, the side effects are significantly reduced, especially the mucositis, which is the mouth ulcers, diarrhea, bleeding from stool, all those things which are common side effects of chemotherapy, how that has been reduced significantly when the same 30 gram of jackfruit flower is consumed from the first day of chemotherapy. So when Dr. Thomas Verghese presented this at Banaras Hindu University, this professor from MD Anderson stood up and said, "Is it possible this jackfruit flower has the seed?" And I told him, in 30 gram, you get at least 5 seeds. And then he said, "I stand here, I feel stupid, because for the last 35 years, we've been trying to convert this jacqueline into a drug, but it has failed in all the safety and efficacy studies. It still has not been converted to a drug. But I stand here, Dr. Thomas is saying he has already given it to 140 patients and got the benefit already." And that is when he told me, "James, do not let anyone convince you the reductionist approach, which is about extracting the active molecule out of a food, is a better way. The pharma approach is a better way than functional food approach, which you have taken. You have taken the food, but then you are doing the study to prove the efficacy of that food." Okay, because it's a food, anybody can consume it. Okay, so from day one, Dr. Thomas was able to give it to patients as a diet, as a food. But my work for 35 years has not reached a single patient yet. And I completely forgot that my father, when I was living as a child in Kolkata, my father used to give me roasted jackfruit seeds. So if jacqueline has this benefit, anybody who likes to eat jackfruit seed, I should have told them to start eating it more often so that they would have got the benefit of jacqueline through the jackfruit seed as a food than while I was working on the drug molecule. So the point I'm saying is that, okay, look, the drug research should continue, but if you find a molecule in a natural food is good for something, you please tell the population who's got a tradition or a culture of eating that food as a regular food. Like in Kerala, we eat the jackfruit meal. We make the chakakuru, the jackfruit seed curry. We make it in different ways. So we have a custom of eating the jackfruit meal and the jackfruit seed in our regular diet. So we should have been told about this benefit 35 years ago. Okay, so the point I'm saying, when a food has a medicinal value compound, you please tell the public that food has this benefit, start eating that food. So 30 gram is equivalent to 3 tablespoons. So 30 gram is also equivalent to 150 gram of fresh jackfruit. So if you look at the standard one plate of the traditional jackfruit meal, it's 150 gram. When you dehydrate, you get 30 gram. So that is the time-tested dosage which Kerala consumed for centuries. And one plate is also equivalent to one plate of salad. So, the jackfruit flower is actually a traditional salad in powder form. Okay, so if you take 30 gram a day, that gives you one plate of salad every day, and that can do wonders for you. So recommendation is to have 30 gram per day, which is 3 tablespoons. You can divide that by 1 tablespoon for breakfast, 1 for lunch, 1 for dinner. Fresh definitely works. Frozen definitely works. But if you make powder, you have to make sure the soluble fiber is high. So you'll have to test it to make sure the soluble fiber is at least 5%. Okay, that is where engineering has come into. We have made it such a way that, okay, we can actually have more than 5% soluble fiber in the flour. So fresh, you don't lose the soluble fiber. Frozen, you don't lose the soluble fiber. In dehydration, because it's water soluble, it can actually go out through the water. Okay? So you have to dehydrate without losing the water and the soluble fiber. As long as you test it after you make the powder and make sure the soluble fiber is more than 5%, you're good. The study in JSS Medical College, which we published in Nature Group Journal Scientific Reports, it clearly shows the insulin resistance has improved. Okay, so insulin, the HOMA-IR insulin resistance improved. All the blood sugar markers have come down, HbA1c has come down, cholesterol has come down, triglycerides have come down. All three inflammatory markers have come down. So it is a fundamental metabolic disease correction. So the batter has a lot of rice, right? So by adding 1 tablespoon of jackfruit flour in your idli dosa batter, that's what the diabetes study was, adding it to idli dosa batter. Okay, so we could clearly demonstrate HbA1c, average blood sugar level reduction. So in the flour form, you can add this to the batter or to an atta under the flour. I mean, fantastic question. In fact, that is a huge opportunity which came out from the JSS Medical College study, that just 5% jackfruit flour in any processed food can neutralize the effect of the processed food. Okay, so, but noodles, we have to demand the noodles with the jackfruit flour from the noodle manufacturer. Okay, it should be added at the time of making. Okay, like what we have done with the biscuits, like we have done with the chocolate, noodles, paratha, all of this can be added at the time of preparation, and that is when the consumers start demanding for it. The food companies have no choice than to integrate that at the time of making. And we have done the trials. It is very much possible to add this to noodles, pasta, paratha, pizza, regular bread. You can add this. But we have to demand this from the food manufacturer. And that is the huge opportunity for Kerala with our abundant jackfruit availability and the food processing sector. Okay, they are under tremendous pressure to make them healthy. Okay, and as we start seeing the weight loss drug, in fact, at the American Society for Nutrition conference, one of the professors I met is the one who discovered the GLP-1 drug, which is the biggest blockbuster drug for weight loss in the US, Ozempic and Wegovy. Okay, and he said, James, we worked 20 years in converting that to a drug and spent 10 billion. Now it's a blockbuster, but for 20 years, no one got the benefit. Okay, from my work, from day one, people got the benefit. Okay, so this huge opportunity for food processing sector, that instead of depending on weight loss drugs, they can have normal processed food and prevent weight gain. Amazon, you can find it on Amazon. Yeah, it's Jackfruit 365. It's next day delivery anywhere in India. So 7 lakh people have given their review on Amazon. Okay, with 4.2 out of 5. If 7 lakh people are consuming it with the roti or idli dosa, what do you eat roti with? A spicy curry, right? You eat your dosa or idli with the chutney, right? So we are only focusing on the basic carbohydrate. We are not touching the curry. The tasty curry dishes are there. Only the core staple food is where we are integrating jackfruit flour. So you can enjoy your spicy food, no effect. Okay, but we are actually controlling the rice and wheat consumption by replacing it in the idli dosa or in the roti. That's why, without changing eating habits. What we have done, this is what Dr. Kalam's asked me, James, changing eating habits is worse than changing religion. You must find a way to add this to what people like to eat without asking them to change the traditional food. So all spicy food as it is, We have only integrated within the roti, idli or dosa or putta, appam, or even oats, anything which we eat in India. In CKD, there are restrictions on how much potassium they can take. Okay, so each one has a limit. So jackfruit is a natural source of moderate potassium. So you will have to ask your renal dietitian to see how much you can consume in a day. So in 2020, a peer-reviewed paper has been published in a high-impact journal called Biomolecules, where it has shown that the efficacy of jackfruit flour in preventing chemotherapy-induced leukopenia. Leukopenia is when the WBC count drops below 4,000, and that is when you start getting mouth ulcers. Again, the lead for that was a paper which was published in Europe saying dietary pectin can protect the intestinal linings when patients are undergoing chemotherapy or radiation. And that is how this dietary intervention started. Okay, look, if pectin can do that, let's see if the jackfruit flour can do it too. And the jackfruit flour did the same thing. And then we found additional benefits what I mentioned about the jackfruit seed. The seed has 17 amino acids. There are only 22 amino acids. 17 are present in the jackfruit. It's one of the highest quality protein you can get. And we overlooked. A lot of people from Kerala were fortunate that Dr. Thomas Verghese published the study just before COVID. Okay, so, and what our studies showed was when you're taking jackfruit flour and undergoing chemotherapy, the WBC count doesn't drop. Because of that, Dr. Thomas could continue to give chemotherapy during COVID. Because if the WBC count doesn't drop, the risk was like a normal person. Okay, and I had a pass as a CEO of a food company, and I do remember giving it to some of his breast cancer patients, delivering at their home when they were undergoing chemotherapy. So kudos to Dr. Thomas Verghese for saving so many patients during COVID. You can add it to the laddu and see what happens. But the best thing is check your sugar level. What we have seen in the study is up to 42% sugar. I'm sure laddu has 90% sugar. And one thing I can categorically say that, okay, a laddu with jackfruit flour will be better than a laddu without jackfruit flour. Okay, so those who do not like buttermilk, I mean, if you like curd, you can add it to curd, or you can add it to rasam, you can add it to a lentil soup, you can add it to a dal. So any creamy gravy, you can add it. It'll be like adding coconut milk. It just makes it thicker. Near sambar, tablespoons, 30 gram or 3 tablespoons. For schools, the number one opportunity is to start integrating this with the midday meal scheme. Okay, so the chapati which you're serving should have the jackfruit flour. Okay, and also educate them. Okay, dosa, any food which you're giving at school, integrate jackfruit flour there so that the students get to know that, okay, look, there's no change in taste. I'm still enjoying. Okay, you can add it to the pasta. You can add it to the, any food, any process, any food which you're making, integrate at the midday meal school itself, number one. Okay, then educate them about the benefits of reducing rice and wheat. Okay, a lot of people think that, okay, look, it's only sugar the problem. No, bulk of our consumption is actually rice and wheat. Okay, we have to reduce rice and wheat. We have to increase green vegetable. Okay, but children don't take greens. And what is jackfruit flour? It's a green vegetable in powder form. It is the unripe, in Malayalam, it's chakka. It's a ka. Ka means it's a vegetable. Okay, when it ripens, the name changes to chakkaparam. Or in all South Indian languages, in Tamil it's palakai, in Kannada it's halsinakai, in Telugu it's panasakai. All of them have the word ka. It's a green vegetable. Okay, so green vegetables, rather than trying to get lettuce or Mediterranean salad for our children, You tell them this is an easy way for them to increase their salad intake without changing their taste. Would you ask them to take salad or add it to their roti? Which is easier? Adding it to the roti. So teach children, integrate midday meal scheme, show them how the roti tastes, ask them to go demand that at home as well. Because 1 in 3 people in India have fatty liver, and that predates diabetes. Okay, so fatty liver progresses to type 2 diabetes. So we have to reverse fatty liver when it starts. Medical practitioners should validate. Okay, so we can find something, but I went to a diabetologist first, got it validated with his father, and on the fatty liver, learned it from a practitioner, validated by a lab researcher, a scientist, and that is when I made it public. Please, encourage children to take control of lifestyle diseases early on in their life. Okay, at least 50% of the plate should be vegetables and fruits, and that we should inculcate early on in their life. And I have, in fact, I even made a suggestion that every notebook should have the perfect plate on the back cover. It is 50% should be vegetables. Only 25% should be carbohydrate, 25% should be protein. That's all. Thank you, Srimar, for inviting me, and it has been and thank you for the great questions.